And welcome back to Get Connected Live. It is Friday, and we've got a great new issue for us to tackle. Today we're going to be talking about, well, we said Intel Inside, ? Is your next upgrade implantable?
Yes. Our Facebook comments were not favorable. Let's put it that way.
A lot of you out there are not interested in upgrading yourselves with technology inside you. That's interesting.
I think it's really scary for people.
Well, it's because, really, is this where we want to go?
Could be the future.
We had a choice of 3 board games to choose from. Operation being one, and Trouble and Sorry being the other 2. So implantable technology is kind of interesting because when we think about upgrades, we think about getting a new phone or a new watch. When you're done with it, it can be passed down to somebody else in your family. If something has a security breach, you can get rid of it and get a new one. Whereas with technology that's inside you, that becomes a far more semi-permanent solution.
Semi-permanent. Well, we did chat with a futurist by the name of Nick Badminton, and if you go to our YouTube channel, you can see our interview with him. And he is one of the people who has an RFID implanted in his hand. And it is just a simple surgery.
So does my cat.
That's right. So does your cat. So does my dog.
So we should clarify this.
Not his hand.
An RFID chip is basically a small chip that operates on radio frequencies. It doesn't need a battery, so you don't have like a power cell inside you that could possibly explode. Not yet. And so basically, a scanner is waved over these things, and it can transmit a certain amount of information. Right? There's not a lot of information that you can put on these things, but there's enough. What would you use an RFID chip for typically?
What would you use a badge to get into your office for? Right? Same kind of thing, or unlocking your garage door, your front door, maybe activating your coffee maker because you want to control the amount of beans that are used,
or maybe the exact temperature you like.
So this thing actually could be, obviously, access control for a few things. I know for myself personally, the one thing that I hate having to carry is my wallet. Right?
Yeah, I like the idea of having that kind of technology in your watch. I'm not sure I want my wallet in my hand.
Well, so
per se.
Now here's what I think. When I think about what's in my wallet, I've got a few things. I've got my payment cards, which are important. But for me, one thing that's more important is my driver's license, my healthcare card, which I never really want to be without. It drives me crazy when I realize I've got into the car and I don't have my wallet with me. I've got to run back up to my condo and grab it, where I feel like if I had this in my person somewhere, I don't have to worry about that card, I don't have to worry about it getting stolen. I've basically got a piece of ID that's always on me at all times.
Are there other uses you can think of that you would use an RFID chip for?
Well, I just want to talk to Graham about that for a second. Yeah. Do you want the government to have all your information embedded inside you as well?
Absolutely. Haven't you seen those dystopic science fiction movies where you're on the run and you got to dig that thing? So you actually hit on a very, very strong point. It's not just government at that point, but it's everybody else then that could possibly read that information. Now we've got a system around this to a certain degree. The RFID chips that are in Nexus cards, for example, they don't send your personal information. What they do send is an identifier that is connected to your file on the back end. So it's not like your personal information is now embedded in you. It's just that number that they could then correlate to a database.
Not unlike Apple and how they deal with Apple Pay.
Yes.
It's your credit card is not there when you tap.
Yeah.
But it's that back end system that's happening.
Yeah, now Apple Pay is kind of interesting, and so is Android Pay and Samsung Pay. They all now generate one-time use numbers for every transaction. With this, it would actually be a static number for the most part, as it is right now, but it would connect there. But there are privacy concerns. Right now, I think you can buy RFID shielding wallets and passport cases.
True.
Right? You guys have both traveled with an RFID passport, right?
Yep. So would we buy RFID blocking jackets and shirts and things?
Maybe that's another purpose for smart clothing in the future, perhaps. But what about other types of implantables? So in the body modification community, they've been doing that a long time as just an aesthetic. But what about there are other types of implantable technology that's different from RFID chips?
Well, for me, I'm at an age where the $6 Million Man was a very important character on TV back in the 80s, and I desperately wanted to have his bionic vision, right? Because we're all wearing glasses.
Yeah.
What if you could have the super, telephoto zoom built into your eye? I would trade my bad eye for that.
I don't know. I would rather have a contact for that. And as much as I'm I'm definitely the person that in our interview with Nick, I said I would absolutely get a chip implanted, but I'm not sure about like if I have the opportunity to have a piece of tech that I could take out and put back in, and I can, I don't know, send it away to get fixed. Upgrade it seems a little bit easier. I'm not totally sold on the eyeball one, but definitely the chip is a possibility. I just haven't come up with a way of using it that would really be that different than using my smartphone, for example. Like I have Google Home set up, and theoretically I could, with an RFID chip, I could activate all of my integrations when I walk through the door. But like we were talking about this morning, that could be just done on your smartphone. So are there additional pros to having one?
Well, one of the pros would be that if you lost your smartphone, nothing's stopping whoever finds it from having access to your entire life.
True.
By just waving it to get into your house, to activate all of your Google Assistant type stuff, or even worst case scenario, drain your bank account and do other things like that. Whereas if it's implanted, it's an extreme case that someone would go that far to actually take it out of you, you know, unless maybe you're a spy or...
Yeah, you're Liam Neeson.
Go back and watch Demolition Man again. There's a really rough moment in that movie. We should actually, though, kind of pull things back a little bit, because we were talking about chips being implanted or possibly, you know, eyeballs being upgraded and replaced. There's a ton of implantable technology out there that people are already using.
Yes.
Right?
Actually, I'd love to touch on that one. The one piece of tech that really fascinated me at CES this year was by Cochlear, and they have an implantable technology that's an implantable cochlear implant where you can control everything with your phone from it, and basically it allows someone who doesn't have the ability to hear and to interact with everything on their apps, on their phone, just as somebody with natural born hearing or without hearing loss would experience. So I think that's the direction of medical tech and implantables that I'm really interested by, is those little pieces of transhumanism-esque kind of things, I suppose. But I also did want to bring up other stuff that isn't necessarily, you wouldn't maybe consider it tech. So for example, there's been some chatter about the implants that are magnetic based. And there's a couple of artists who have done some really interesting things with their implants that aren't necessarily sending data.
No, it's sometimes it's receiving data or getting feedback from various sensors that they have implanted. And that can be really interesting from an artistic standpoint. It doesn't serve any medical purpose, but it also is an interesting angle to sort of explore a certain art form by using, say, the vibrations from earthquakes around the world to influence dance and light and everything else that some of these artists are using.
So we should say that this in particular, you know, some people are implanting neodymium magnets or rare earth magnets, and that basically gives them a bit of a sixth sense. And I think Nick talked about this specifically. And the idea there is, and some electricians actually have put this in, because they can sense when circuits are live just by holding this thing near that space. So that's kind of an interesting perspective. So this actually brings me back to what I was just talking about, which is we now have the idea that you have implantables that are optional versus implantables that are medical technology in order to help either restore quality of life or enhance quality of life. And we're starting to see the line between those things blur.
Functional versus artistic, sort of.
Yeah, you talked about like cochlear implants. We can talk about pacemakers, right? These are things where it's bringing back quality of life or adding quality of life or changing quality of life for people in a way that they desire, you know, or has been prescribed by a doctor. And then there are others where are we perhaps enhancing ourselves past what was traditionally possible. So if you've got 20/20 vision, but you're able to be given telescopic vision, this is now something that, you know, we're getting into what's called transhumanism, or upgrading ourselves past human 1.0 into the next thing. It feels like there's a lot of comfort with looking at things from, it's a medical necessity. I needed a pacemaker. As opposed to perhaps I got one to help regulate my heart rate so that I would be more efficient when I'm exercising. You know, this feels like it's a new area for us, so a lot of us are uncomfortable going, wait, I wouldn't do that, but if a doctor came to you and said, you needed a pacemaker right now,
or an insulin pump,
you would go and get one.
Well, and it sort of, like you said, it blurs that line between necessity and
fashion, sort of.
Kind of, yeah. Like, and just this enhancement. Like, I want to improve my vision. I want to improve my heart rate when I'm free diving, or who knows what you're using this stuff for. But why not? I think a lot of people have trouble though. Anytime there's a scalpel involved, or in the case like with Nick's RFID, it's simply just a large needle that's injected. That seems like it's an optional thing for the most part with this stuff, as opposed to a medically necessary thing, which is the only reason most people would choose to go underneath the knife.
So what is a scenario that you would choose? What kind of implantable would you be open to, and why?
The Bionic eyes is the...
Well, that's probably an extreme. But I mean, even
realistically,
something like Nick, the implant that Nick has, the RFID, it's somewhat of a novelty, but I think it'd be kind of fun to explore the kinds of things I could figure out. What would I want to unlock with this thing? Or what kind of data would I want to transfer with this thing? Would Graham and I have a secret handshake that our RFIDs would talk to each other? Like that kind of thing. Ooh. These are the kinds of things you could explore if you have this stuff, right?
I suppose. So would you would do something where it's a data exchange kind of implant?
That would be ideal. I think that would be most useful. Simply a passive set of data, like a code or something like that, to unlock a door. That's also useful, I think, for at least for me. I don't know specifically what I'd want to unlock, but that becomes like kind of the idea is trying to figure out what's the best use of this technology now that I have this power.
And I want to ask you the same question, but before I do, is there something that would prevent you from an implant, or is there something that's a con or a fear on your behalf?
Well, at least for the passive RFID part, I don't think there's a con. My cat has one, and she seems to be doing okay after 8 years. So,
I do think it's funny how we do that with our pets to make sure that if they're found, if they're lost, then we know who they are and who they belong to. But we don't do that for people.
And we really should.
I wonder if we should. What about you, Graham? What would you use? What would you be afraid of using?
So, I kind of look at it like I would love to see any and all of these things happen. The idea that maybe you've got a food sensitivity and there are nanobots in your stomach that could then neutralize those enzymes. I would get that done in a heartbeat. I'm a little lactose intolerant. I know you're all shocked. And being able to eat cheese whenever I want, that would be beautiful. The idea of, I had laser surgery when I was 21, and it took, and it's starting to go. And being able to have, reshaped eyes again, but maybe even telescopic vision would be wonderful. The idea of access control is incredibly cool. But I would take it one step further. We start to look at things like, do you remember the movie Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves?
I'm not nerdy enough.
If you haven't seen it, it's a classic. Well, it's one of these movies, I think, that was dropped in the 90s, the mid-90s. And
it's a precursor to The Matrix, too.
Yeah, he plays a character named Johnny who has a 320 gigabyte hard drive installed in his head, which, I think I've got an iPod with that much space. And being able to have that augmented memory storage, I think, would be very, very cool. So for me, the boundary between man and machine, I am open to exploring breaking that down. We are really just biological machines, and these parts, they wear out. So I'm very much looking at, my goal, don't get me wrong here, is to live forever or die trying. So the more of me that I can replace with parts that aren't going to wear out, even if it's just regrowing parts of myself, I think I would be down for. Big, bold answer there, I think.
For me, that was a really interesting point about memory, because that's something that, for whatever reason, I've never really had a great short-term memory, and there are some things that I really wish that I had photographic memories of. My partner, for example, has almost a perfect photographic memory, and it would just be so useful to sort of go into my, bio drive or whatever and access this.
A skill upgrade.
Yeah.
As opposed to an unlocking key or something like that.
I think an enhancement like that where I could, if there was a way to keep memories in, that would be really of use to me. That would be wonderful. Can you imagine never having to use a password scenario again, never having to access those things on your devices?
That's Googling your own brain?
Yeah, really.
It's kind of interesting because we have that to a degree now, right? Like if you take a look at Touch ID and Face ID on iOS, in a lot of cases, I've been able to create these ridiculously complex passwords as part of the keychain. I don't know 90% of my passwords now. I literally know that I just need to look at my phone and my face unlocks my keychain and plugs the password in, and I don't have to worry about it. So we're kind of in this transitionary period where I think passwords are about to go away. Apple has just updated Face ID recently. They did a quick update so that no longer twins and triplets can unlock your phone. Apparently it's a very difficult thing to do. But this is another way where maybe it's not implantable, but again, using biometrics in order to get rid of that. So yes, a passwordless world, I think, is a great place to be in, whether that is a chip in the palm of your hand or in your fingertip or just your face. I think there's some really cool things there.
And what do you guys have to say, one last thing before we end off, what do you have to say to those who are afraid of this idea, and what do you think is a common misconception about this kind of technology?
Well, I think the people who are afraid of the idea, and I actually am a little afraid of the idea as well. You asked, what wouldn't I do?
Yeah.
And that is get something that has a complex operating system built into it that can be accessed remotely. That's the one that gets me. Right? Because if you take a look at all of our security vulnerabilities right now, the ability to perhaps log into my body through Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or any other wireless mechanism, that's the scary one there, right? Anything
like the pacemaker hacking, that was a concern.
Yeah, so I would say that those fears, I think, are justified. We need to work on hardening those operating systems before this becomes something that we can do on a day-to-day basis.
I would think something that is relatively easily upgradable, because we all know how fast technology can advance. I don't want to be stuck with Windows 95 inside.
Well, that one was pretty stable.
That's true.
Fair enough.
Did we use the same Windows 95?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, thanks for your thoughts, guys. Is there anything final you wanted to add on implantables?
I'm signing up as soon as I can.
Okay, right on. Well, catch us on YouTube for the interview that we mentioned. We'll post the link below, as well as the information for all of the implant technology kind of content that we've been curating over the last few weeks. Please join us on our Facebook page. We're running a contest right now for some mobile accessories for Samsung, specifically I think the S7. So if you've got an S7, we've got some stuff for you, perhaps. So please participate. This weekend we will be skipping the GetConnected podcast and radio show, but catch us on the app show on Sunday. Anything else?
That's everything.
All right. Have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks from GetConnected.